In a world overwhelmed by general information and superficial expertise, the book Specialized Knowledge serves as a quiet but powerful reminder of what truly builds success, impact, and transformation. It doesn't scream for attention. It doesn't offer quick fixes. Instead, it draws us inward, into the intimate realm where true power is cultivated, not through knowing everything, but by knowing something with deep clarity, precision, and application. Specialized knowledge is not about stuffing our minds with facts, it's about mastering what matters, channeling it with purpose, and using it as the spark to light the fire of our potential. From the very beginning, the book calls upon us to reflect on the age-old trap of chasing broad education without true direction. It acknowledges how we often confuse information with intelligence, or credentials with competence. We collect degrees, take endless courses, and accumulate certificates in hopes of proving our worth, yet deep inside, we still feel unsure, lost in the sea of generality. Why? Because what we truly lack is depth. We know a little about everything, and nothing well enough to build something meaningful with it. The book gently peels back these layers, helping us understand that transformation begins when we focus, not just intellectually, but emotionally and spiritually. Specialized knowledge is a tool, but also a mirror. It reflects our choices, our passions, and ultimately our courage. It takes bravery to walk the narrow path of specialization, to say yes to one thing and no to the noise. But in doing so, we give ourselves permission to matter in a very specific way. Consider the craftsman who devotes his life to one instrument, mastering its language until it sings through him. Or the scientist who spends decades exploring one disease, not because it's trendy, but because it's personal, because her mother once suffered in silence. That is the power of going deep, rather than wide. When knowledge is fused with purpose, it becomes more than information, it becomes a calling. The book urges us to see that success in any field, whether it be business, medicine, the arts, or service, rarely comes from knowing a little about a lot. It comes from applying highly specific knowledge in a way that solves problems, serves people, and creates value. We are not paid for what we know, we are paid for what we do with what we know. This distinction may seem subtle, but it is the axis upon which all real progress turns. Let's take a simple example: a baker in a small town. There may be a dozen other bakeries nearby, but what if this one baker knows something very specific about sourdough fermentation, how to make it healthier, tastier, longer lasting? Maybe she studied it for years, experimented with hundreds of batches, consulted with microbiologists, even learned ancestral techniques from old villages. Now, her bread isn't just bread, it's a product of specialized knowledge. And so, her business thrives, not because she's the only baker, but because she's the only one who knows this particular thing, and uses it masterfully. This is where the book's deeper message begins to blossom. Specialized knowledge is never just about career. It's about contribution. It asks, what do you know so well that it can bless the lives of others? What can you master so deeply that it becomes a service to the world? In a society often addicted to novelty, this book reminds us that mastery is still sacred. That going deep is still noble. That quiet excellence still matters. The book also explores how specialized knowledge is not static. It evolves. What is specialized today may be outdated tomorrow. That's why the truly wise never stop learning. They continue to refine, adapt, and re-educate themselves. In this way, the book gives us a quiet but urgent invitation: become a lifelong learner. Not a passive consumer of content, but an intentional seeker of wisdom. Keep sharpening your blade, keep tuning your ear, stay in conversation with your field. Because the more you grow, the more you can give. At its core, specialized knowledge is not a book about intellect, it's a book about alignment. About marrying your passion with skill, and skill with service. It teaches us that real transformation happens when you find that unique intersection of what you love, what you know, and what the world needs. That's where specialized knowledge becomes sacred. That's where it becomes legacy. The book also speaks to the deep emotional journey of embracing specialization. It's not always glamorous. It can feel isolating. Sometimes people won't understand why you've chosen a narrow path. They'll urge you to broaden your options, or have a backup plan. But the book reminds us, greatness often lies on the other side of solitude. When we choose depth over popularity, excellence over convenience, and purpose over approval, we may walk alone, but we walk powerfully. One of the most moving sections of the book explores the stories of individuals who transformed their lives, not by becoming generalists, but by going deep into one idea. One man who was once homeless became a leading voice in trauma recovery, because he studied the mind with obsessive compassion, driven by the pain of his own childhood. A woman who survived cancer now teaches others how to heal holistically, not because of a degree, but because she lived the research, felt its cost, and found truth through lived experience. In both stories, it wasn't about knowing everything. It was about owning one thing completely, and offering it with all their heart. There is a sacred humility in mastering a niche. The ego often wants to be a jack of all trades, so it can impress others. But the soul desires mastery, it yearns for a depth that reflects its truth. And the book guides us, gently but firmly, to listen to the soul more than the ego. To become a quiet expert, rather than a loud amateur. To earn our voice, not just claim it. That is the moral power of specialized knowledge. In a world where AI can generate articles, write code, and even compose music, the question is no longer, can you do this? But, can you do this with soul, with insight, with wisdom that only comes from deep, lived, and human experience? Specialized knowledge is how we remain irreplaceable, not by competing with machines, but by transcending them through depth, empathy, and humanity. And so, the book concludes not with formulas, but with reflection. It asks you to turn inward. What have you already lived through that could become your area of mastery? What wound, what challenge, what fascination has followed you like a shadow, waiting for your attention? It suggests that within each of us lies a sacred curriculum, crafted not in schools, but in the theater of life itself. And when we turn our attention to it with sincerity, curiosity, and discipline, we begin to unlock a kind of knowledge that no institution can grant. So take heart, you don't need to know everything. You just need to know something deeply, lovingly, and usefully. Whether you're a teacher, an artist, a mechanic, a healer, or a dreamer, your path to greatness lies not in being more like everyone, but in becoming fully yourself. The world doesn't need more information. It needs more truth. And truth, when shaped into specialized knowledge, becomes power, power to help, to heal, to lead, and to transform. In the end, specialized knowledge is a call to clarity, a challenge to go deeper, a reminder that we were never meant to be everything, but we were always meant to be something extraordinary. And that extraordinary something, it's waiting within you. All it asks is your devotion,